Welcome to Yeshiva Daf. We're holding in Chulin Daf Lametes. We're starting in the beginning of Lametes Amud Aleph on the top, in the third line. So our Mishnah taught, we saw this in the previous Daf, is the idea of can a machshava of the owner affect the shchita. So we said if the owner is a guy, can his machshava affect the shchita that's done by a Jew? And if we hold that a guy has machshava with the zara, doesn't ruin it. So with that, the Gemara goes with the following thing: Idmar hashoichet es a behemo lizroik damo lavodas kachov. He's shechting, and he has in mind when he's shechting that he's going to throw the blood of the zara. This reminds us of Maseches Zvachim, which we're going to point out right away, because we're talking about the fact that it's a machshava. While you're doing one thing, you're thinking about the next thing. So he's doing shchita, and he has in mind to do zrika. So he's doing shchita with the zara, and have in mind to have zrika with the zara. He's doing shchita with the zara, so shchita stam, have in mind to have zrika with the zara. Or like tir chabel with kachon, or with the chaylev with the zara. It's a problem. Even though when he did the shchita, he didn't have that thought about the shchita. But he did. Yeah, the thought of in the shchita affects the zrika. Why? Why do we say that? Because two things are going to teach us. In Zvachim itself, in Korbanis, I can have machshava from one to another. I can do shchita with the wrong thought of zrika. I could do shchita with the wrong thought of kabbalah. That's mechashvi me'avoida la'avoida. A. B. I'm learning outside of Beis Hamikdash, which means Avodah Zarah, from inside of Beis Hamikdash, which means regular korban. So two things.
Once you say Yalfin Chutz Mipim, isn't that basic? Doesn't that already tell you much?
No. So here, in me'avoida is not so pashut. We'll see in a moment.
I'm saying the whole pnim is me'avoida.
No, only by pigul. Only by pigul, not by lishmo. That's the chiddush of Yechezkel. The shaila is when I'm doing shchita the right machshava. But I have in mind to do zrika shol yishma, does it affect it or not, or it's only a pigul? That's what the Gemara brings.
So you say by the shmor you have to have in the same avoida.
According to the other sheet, let's see. Shlokish Omar muteris. Why? Ein chashvim avoida ma'avoida. You know, a choshev from one avoida in lishma has to be that avoida itself. And additionally, the second one really you don't need, according to Shlokish, because once I say that this thing doesn't exist, so you're not learning chutz b'nim. So the Gemara tells Tamayu Digmar Shochad Lishmo Lizroik Domo Shelo Lishmo. That's the Lishmo. He's doing shchita, and he has in mind to do the wrong zrika Lishmo. V'echon Mabsulo Rishim Lokish Avak Sheiro. That's machlokes. V'echon Mabsulo Mechashim Avoida Avoida. Why? Because Gamrin and Mechshas Pigul. Learn for Pigul. The same with Pigul. What's Pigul? Not eating the right time. That by definition is you're doing shchita, and you have in mind to do the Pigul in the wrong time. That's by definition. Because wrong time, it's a mitzvah. I'm doing it now, it's not the wrong time. Have in mind to do something in the wrong time. I'm not learning for Pigul. It's more of a tzricha. Maybe Rish Lakish only argues in this concept of learning chutz b'fnim. I'm not learning of a zara from Lishma in the Beis Hamikdash. But maybe he agrees that Lishma will learn from Pigul that you do machshav from one to another. Maybe all the B'Yochanan said is that you say you do machshav from one avodah to another, but to say that you learn of a desire from there and not. So the Gemara says that's what I have to point it out. There's two separate, distinct machlokes between the B'Yochanan and Rish Lakish. One machlokes is inside Beis Hamikdash is a machshava on one avodah affect the other avodah if it's not pigul. Second machlokes is outside Beis Hamikdash learn from inside Beis Hamikdash. So when Meisel Sheish is Omar Reisi said, now this is from our Mishnah. It's a quote from our Mishnah. Ma b'moko shemachshava poiseles b'mugdoshim ein hakol olech el achar oived. If behegdish the machshava ruins it, I still say that you go only based on the worker, meaning the kohen, not the owner. Moko she'en machshav poiseles b'chulin ein udin shelo yakol olech el achar shechet. So that was the Mishnah. We basically in the Mishnah said this idea that the only one who can ruin the korban is the kohen, not the owner. Why? Because in Kachim, the only one who can ruin it, he said in outside, the only one who can ruin the animal is the shochet, not the owner. Why? Because by Kachim, the only one who can do it is the shochet, which is the kohen, not the owner. So also by there, it's going to be the same thing. That's what we're basically saying. Now, so what is the lashon of Rabbi? Inside the machshavos peiseles, you say there needs to be only the worker can ruin it. Outside machshavos is not peiseles. So of course you go based on the one who's doing the actual action and not the owner. That's the right Rabbi. What does Rabbi mean to say that inside machshava works and outside machshava does not work? That's what the most bothered by. Outside machshava doesn't work. A person has a bad machshava, he ruins the korban. Well, what do you mean? If he thinks over the zar, he ruins it. So the one says, no, hello, we're talking about me'avoida la'avoida. So after the one says, Moko she'en machshava p'sel b'chulin, and it's that was the lashon of the Mishnah. My ein machshava p'sel b'chulin. What does it mean? What do the words mean? Ein machshava p'sel b'chulin. Ilem edoy pastor klal. There's no psul at all. Elas vicho da'avoidas kechovi in the mitzvah hechem ashkaradlo. You told me avoid machshava, bad machshava doesn't work. So what will be the case of doing a korban over the zar? Machshava doesn't work. Elama, of course the machshava works. So what does it mean that Kachim machshava works and Chulin machshava does not work? Ela pshita me'avoida la'avoido. That's shat. Avoida la'avoida. Shaila is, can you do machshava from one avoida to the other avoida? So by Kachim, if one understands, you can do machshava from one avoida to the other avoida. By Chulin, you can do machshava from one avoida to another avoida. That's the Shah in the Mishnah. So the say if by the way you read the Mishnah, according to what they want to say right now, says the see, I don't understand. If by Kachin I have machshava from one avodah to another avodah, the only one who can affect it is the one doing the shchita, not the owner. So kol sheken outside by Chulin that you don't have a machshava from avodah to avodah. So kol sheken that the only one who can affect it is the shochet, not the owner. That's what he says. Says the Gemara.
The whole thing about it is not shayach, so you can't.
Where's the shayach? It's machlokes.
It's not avodah.
Yeah, avodah means shchita to zriko. That's what the Gemara is talking about. You're doing, he's doing shchita, but at least look for the zar.
It's cool and he means avodah zara.
He means avodah zara. Yeah. Very cool. One just goes puts it into the words of the Mishnah. Only the avodah itself. So now, says the Gemara, so based on this, if that's what we learn in the Mishnah, so we have one way we're going with the Yechezkel and one way we're going with Rish Lakish. Because you're saying that you do mechash avodah inside Beis Hamikdash, that is like Rabbi Yechezkel. But you're saying that you're not mechashem outside Beis Hamikdash avodah, that is like Rish Lakish. So that's what it says. Pnim, what goes inside Kashla Shimon Lakish that says that you don't mechash avodah, and now Mishnah says you are mechash avodah. Chutz Kashla B'Yechanon, that's his Kashla B'Yechanon, that says that even B'Avodah Zor you could do a Machshov Avodah. So when Bishop Plim no Shimon Lakish Lakasho, Hami Kamei D'Shamim B'Yechanon, Ha Levoso D'Shamim B'Yechanon. So the word says, no, I'll tell you what. Rish Lakish maybe changed his mind. Originally he said that Plim you ain't Mechashav Avodah. But after you heard from B'Yechanon, he changed his mind. What did he hear from B'Yechanon? He changed his mind. So Rashi brings you two explanations. The second explanation is that he heard Rabbi Yechezkel say what he said. He heard Rabbi Yechezkel, his Rebbe. Rabbi Yechezkel is the Rebbe of Rish Lakish. As we know, Rabbi Yechezkel made a cure with Rish Lakish, brought him back from being the thief, being the mobster, and he learned by him. Once he heard Rabbi Yechezkel disagreeing, he decided to hold him like Rabbi Yechezkel. But the first shot of Rashi, and seemingly from the other Rishonim, that's the first shot, is before he heard that this Mishnah says like a Rebbe. So when he heard Rabbi Yechezkel saying a svara, he argued with his Rebbe. Once Rabbi Yechezkel showed him that the Mishnah says it, then he couldn't argue anymore. So Taisus has a very, very short Taisus. If you look at the last line in Taisus, Hamikam Nisham Rabbi Yechezkel, Teimu, my Terutzu Zeh Shevitaretz, Shomar Rish Lakish Koydim Shalom the Mishnah. So what he would tell me, Rish Lakish didn't learn the Mishnah, so he said something, and Rabbi Yechezkel told him, that's a Mishnah. Oh, you're right. So, what kind of a svara is that? That's he brings the question, so it's something to think about. Okay. Anyway, what is the Gemara saying? So the Gemara says our Mishnah is not so difficult according to Rabbi Yochanan, according to Rish Lakish, because even Rish Lakish says you don't do anything. There's no avodah, not inside and outside. But it could be once you saw the Mishnah, he agreed that you have machshava avodah inside. So that's such a problem. But the outside is kasha Rabbi Yochanan, because according to our Mishnah, outside you're not mechashim avodah. So no, the way you explain the Mishnah is based on the concept of the four avodas. By mukdashim, every one of the avodas can poisel. Where? For people. Right? Shchita, Kabbalah, Zrika, or Elocha. If you had machshavas people, it ruins it. Any one of the avodas, the four avodas. So you have four different opportunities, so to speak, to ruin the korban, and still you say the only one who can ruin is not the owner, is the oived. So when place the machshavas b'chulin only shtei avodas. There's only two. There's two avodas that you could place in a avodah zarah. One is shchita, and the other one is zrika. That's it.
The other two you can't do.
There's no halacha in chulin, and there's no kabbalah in chulin. These avodas don't exist. Just kosher. Rashi asked, what about hekter chalavim, putting fat on the mizbech? We do have hekter chalavim by putting the fat.
That makes something pigul?
Yeah, we learned that in Zokin. It could be pigul even by hekter chalavim if you think about it. So Rashi, if you look at Loshen Rashi,
Rashi says it does not become pigul.
No, it becomes pigul. You can't think about a pigul. That's two things.
Okay.
That's the thing. Yeah. Look at Loshen Rashi. He says, "She'im mechashu b'presel b'yim b'dal v'yizah b'shnayim b'shchitu v'zriko. Te'anu d'chtivon zoyvech l'lokim mechirom palasim s'chem midam ava kabbalah v'yiloch l'ksibu." You don't have kabbalah v'yiloch. Ve'aktor avav d'shayich b'avis kachavim miulava v'ydi lavsudi b'yim u'shubek techalam v'des kachavim hechad d'loy nishchad v'nizak dam v'des kachavim. Te'afilu b'frim l'mivsel korban u'chashu l'chres basu b'shalak techalavim. If you think about it, b'shalak techalavim, that won't make a difference. It's only when you think about Zrika, but Hekter Chalovim be a problem. So Hekter Chalovim is a little different. That's why Rashi said we're not bringing it as one of the avodas. So all the Gemara is saying is that our Mishnah said there's a difference between Kodshim and Chulin. So what was the difference? The Gemara's first attempt to say Mechashri Avodah L'Avodah, which goes into our Sugyo. So the Gemara that goes Mechashri Avodah L'Avodah. The difference is that in Kodshim you have four avodas, you can ruin the korban, and in Chulin you have only two avodas. So if so, let's read the Gemara again from the top of the Amud. So that was what we said in the Mishnah, that the only one who could break in the korban, the animal, will be the sheikhet and not the owner. So what I can say that Be'echanon, a sheikhet as a behemoth lizroig domo levaskachon. So here you have like a Be'echanon, you could do machshav me'avodah l'avodah. So someone is shechting the behemoth to do zrika. So he's doing shchita, having a mind to do zrika. He has a mind to do aktar. It's called ziv chamesim, meaning ziv chamesim refers to the zor. Now what happens? He did shchita and no machshav. After the shchita, he did shchita, and then he started about after the shchita. Zaya ma'aseh b'kisri v'lo omru b'lo isur v'lo heter. So they had a ma'aseh, it came in Kisri, story, to the person that shchita with no machshava. After the shchita, they had a bad machshava. They said no yisur ne'et. Why? I'll tell you why. There's a machlekes Rabbanan and Rabbi Elazar if this is a problem or not. So they didn't want to say that it is a isur because Rabbanan say it's mutter. They want to say it's mutter because Rabbi Elazar says asur. So they didn't say anything in that case. That's what the Gemara says. Mimai. So before we get to explain this, it wasn't going to get back to the moment, but the Gemara says here's a rayat abricha, because you see that a machshava by shchita is poisel the zrika. So mimai dimat kalu kamer bon asom and the lishmar the choshev. Maybe so the Gemara says, sorry, I said it wrong. I'm going to correct it. The Gemara wanted to say, what's Rabban and Abelazar? Who's Rabban and Abelazar? Rabban and Abelazar in our Mishnah. I skipped that part. What was Abelazar in our Mishnah? Do you say Stam Machshavas Goy Lavid Zara? Do you say when a Goy, if I don't ask any questions, he wants to do Lavid Zara? So Gemara says the same thing over here. Saying in this case, what's this case? You have a person who goes and he's shechting Lavid Zara, and he has in mind, so he doesn't have in mind to do Zrika Lavid Zara. So the shaila is, do you say Lavid Zara or not? Right? So the Gemara says, in other words, can the owner ruin it or not? So Gemara says, in the same machlokes, according to Rabbanan, there's no problem. According to Abelazar, there is a problem. And therefore, I didn't say Isur Eter. So the Gemara, Rabbanon, they say that we don't assume he's thinking about the Zara, like a Bresi. That's only because we didn't hear him say that he's doing over the Zara. But here we did hear him saying, this guy after the Shechita came out and screamed, I'm doing over the Zara. Maybe so maybe then you say, yeah. Usually I say that Stam Machshavas Goy is not over the Zara. But now that it's not Stam, maybe everybody agrees. That's only in the case before by Goy. In the case that we have over here, it was a Jew. So maybe I don't say that.
Even though he was had a machshava for the Zara.
Yeah, but he did shechita, and then afterwards he thought. So he's saying, oh, if he thought of the Zara, probably shechita was also for the Zara. No, he was a Jew. Maybe he became a picarius only afterwards. The reason why the Isser didn't want to say because according to Rabbanan is mutter, because I'm not assuming that he had a bad machshava during the shechita. But again, the case will be just to emphasize. What's the case? There was a Yisrael who shechted the animal. After he shechted the animal, he said, I want to do it with the Zara. So the shaila is, do you say now that he says of the Zara after shechita, he also meant of the Zara when he did shechita? Or no? So what comes out clearly, we'll see that the Gemara builds up. A machshava after shechita doesn't affect the animal. It's only machshava doing shechita. But the shaila is, when he's showing after shechita that he wants to do it with the Zara, that you say retroactively, I found out that doing shechita also would do over the Zara, you say, so what's the according to Rabbanan, you don't say according to Shimon, you do say says the Gemara, hi Shimon, which is Shimon? Either Shimon, the Gittin, by getting the not. Haboy Shomar Kisu get Leishti. Says, I want to write a get to my wife. He told people to write it. He said to get right, he didn't say to give it, so he's just making a joke. He didn't intend to give it to her. There was a person who wrote, said, write a get to my wife. The whole guy went to the roof, and he died. He went to the roof, and he we'll see in a moment how he fell, but he fell from the roof and he died.
I pushed him.
He fell on his own. How raise a get? Meaning, if he commits suicide, it's a get. That's why he gave her a get, because that was his intention.
The fact they didn't say to know what's.
So I'm saying that shows they really want to say to know. And they have to go, they're back and get it, means that they did do it, they gave it to her. Because if not, he can't do it after death. If the wind pushed him, ain't her get. It's not a get. Why not? Because I don't say, he didn't say no. And the fact that he died, it was a terrible coincidence. You just said if you didn't say no, it doesn't work. If you see from his following actions what he meant in the original actions, a raise a get. When I started then this story happened. All the gag enough of the mace, and all the sugar lim enough of the raise a get. So you see over there that he jumped. So you see that you say the concept of so here as well. If you did shchita, then he said I meant of the zoro. You say
Does he have to get too hard?
Yeah, that's what he said. I said that's what I mentioned before. They were talking about a case they gave her the get, but now Shabbos does they actually mean to give her the get. They went to Beis Din. Was this a valid get when they gave it to her? Same with Dilma Shani also to call him a kisvu. Oh, 1 second. There, he already said something. It's not that he was quiet. He said, write a get to my wife. Now, Shaila is, did he mean give it to my wife? So as Rashi points out over here, we have cases already in Hilchos Gittin that the person says right to get to my wife, he means give my get to my wife. Like I'm a sukkah. Shimon Shazuri says I'm a sukkah. Person who's sick, and he says right to get to my wife, he means give it to my wife. So we find such a thing. He did say something, but here by Shechita by the Zohar, he didn't say a thing. Who said that referring to the case of a Zara is the following. Tanya says in the Brisa, someone writes his properties, his assets to somebody else. And there's slaves over there. The receiver says, I'm not interested. He gives him everything he owns. He says, no thank you. So it says the Gemara, I'm not interested. The second one, the receiver is a kohen. Even though he said I'm not interested. Because he says I'm not interested. So it goes back to the Yorshim of the giver. What do you mean? According to the Kama, he goes to the second one when he's screaming, I'm not interested in this gift. In the case that there was someone getting up and screaming, and he says, I am not interested in this gift before the gift came to him, for sure, there's no gift. If he was quiet, he got the gift, and after he gets the gift, he starts screaming and yelling. Too bad, too late, it's already yours. Meaning, someone else was kohen by him, and then he, and in other words, he's not the one who he got the shtar. Rashi says someone else accepted the shtar on his behalf in front of him. Accepted the shtar in front of him. So he never got it. Someone else got it. Shaila is that guy a shliach.
Why does it be in front of him?
Because he want to say that he had the opportunity to scream, he did not scream. But he was quiet and he started screaming. The fact that he was silent means he's crying. The is screaming, he's changing his mind after the fact. The end proves the beginning. So I didn't come to my hand. So Shmuel is accepting a gift on my behalf. I'm not interested. He didn't say a thing. I didn't want it. It never came to me. So here's where Shmuel says that when he had the opportunity, eventually he screamed, that shows that's what he meant originally. Sitting over here by Shchito, when he had, after Shchita he screamed, he said, I'm doing over the Zara, he said, so that's why they didn't want to paskin, this animal is kosher, because Kvoid of Shmuel, so that's why they didn't say it. Says the Gemara, back to our sugya. So this was all a side point. This whole Amud, the Gemara just brought a rayo. What was the rayo? The rayo was, do you say, we spoke about the machloikis in the Mishnah. If a person has it says machshava, if it's the owner, now the sheichet will affect the shechita or not. So the Gemara then, by the way, whatever he did shechita and then he had a machshava. Right? That was the case. So the Gemara said, the Gemara just brought the Tanya Kaseh Abichara, and that brayse brought the story of having a dibur after the shechita. And near that, the Gemara has that Machlokes. The Gemara explains what does it mean they did dibur after shechita, and the Gemara brings over here that the Machlokes says we didn't do kvoid Shum Gamliel. Going back now to the sugya, Pascal that what? Pascal that the owner, the goy, cannot affect the shechita with his bad machshav. These Ishmaelim came to the city of Tzikonya. They gave rams to the Jewish butchers. We won the blood, we won the fat. And the skin and the meat will be yours. So they said, we're going to split the animal. So they said to Abiyahu to ask, what's going to be done over here? In other words, even though the guy owns partial of the behemoth, I don't care. The machshava of the owner doesn't affect the animal. The only thing that affects the animal is the sheichet. So the sheichet here are Jews. Who's doing the shechita? The Jews are the butchers. Even though the animals belong to goyim, it's not a problem. Only Avacha Breda Avai Lavashi Lavloser. Yoivlezuzo Letabach Yisrael Mai. What happens if the guy gave money to the Jewish butcher? So now he's the owner. Can he affect it with machshav? My Omer Lei says the Gemara. So he says Chazinon. So we're talking about what? According to Abulazar. Rashi says, if you look at Rashi clearly, Zuzah Tabach Yisrael, Shul Basar, V'amalak Yishchit B'Yintecho, Ten L'Midin Azeh Basar, Mi Mitzvah Be'im U'Be'achi, Mi Amin Kiyom La Rabbi Eliezer, Hechadav Be'im Shutrus, Chizabno Mi Karo, U'Shatak Kulish V'Tekechov V'Nidol Yisrael, Chutz B'Chatzei Kovet Shelo. Ki Agram L'Loi Divu L'Shtam. Meaning, Rabbi Eliezer said that the guy, if he's the owner, he ruins the animal. But here, he's not really the owner. He just gave money for the animal. Is he considered to be the owner to ruin it or not? So what happens if he gave money for the Jewish butcher to get a part of the animal? We check. If this guy is a bulldozer, in other words, he's a bully, he's someone you can't fight with, and he gave you the money, there's no way changing the sale, so he's considered to be the owner. According to Abulazar, he affects the shchita. Now this is a very funny expression. If not, so the Jew could tell him the sale is not valid. So even though if he does keep the sale, Rashi says, I don't care, because the Maaseh, he could have said the sale is not valid, I could have changed my mind, so therefore he's not doing al das for the owner. And look at the Rashi, what does it mean? Says Rashi, Hare Roishcho V'Harei Har. Here's a head, and here's a mountain. Hakezel Ze. Go hit your hand into the mountain.
So pound sand.
Yeah, bounce. Hit your hand into the mountain. Right? Why? Kivan the matzah tchuy. Let's just finish the Rashi. Ishtaket dechishochet Yisrael lavadai del kechov kashochet. He's not shakti for the zor. I'm not really, he's not the owner because he can always change the sale. Hilkashai. Why if you're able to give them? He says Rashi, how we know the Begoy money is coin. More is the coin coiners. He says, I know you, I'm kicking you out because I can always change the sale. I'm not making you a partner to ruin my animal. So the regular person, the guy is the owner, the guy ruins the animal by having stam machshavas gekhovim le'avodah zarah. But if he's buying with money, so now it depends. If he can change his mind, so you have the din of what? You have the din of if he can't change his mind, he's a gaver almo, so he's considered to be the owner. If he changes his mind, so you can tell him take your hand and hit it onto the mountain. So then it tells he's not really the owner. If he's not really the owner, so then he's not affecting the shchita according to Rabbi Eliezer. According to Rabbi Yasi, we saw before, he says that never the owner has a problem, so that will won't be known of kibbutz. So according to Rabbi Eliezer, according to Rabbi Yasi, will be okay. Very good. Stop over here. Continue Beis Hashem tomorrow. This week at 7:30. Start from the Mishnah Beis Hashem.
Yeah.
Need that?